feeling that you have when your website could use a little bit of work. It's not quite working for your organization. It doesn't really fit who you are right now. And so you need to do some work. So then the next question, at least one of the next questions you can ask yourself is, can I get away with like a refit? Can I do some small modifications? Or is it time for a redesign? So my name is Erica Dickstein with Spring Insight Marketing, and I'm here with my colleague,
Laura Mayer. Hello.
Awesome. So let's, Laura, talk today about these two options of how to take a next step with your website. So what would you say are some good signs that you don't really need to completely redesign your website? You can get away with sort of a retrofit, or just taking the existing design and working in a very intentional way to update throughout.
Yeah. I would say the users, the clients, almost every time are going to think visually what they need to do to tweak. And a retrofit, if it really is just a matter of some visual elements, then a retrofit makes a lot of sense. If you just want to maybe tweak your colors a little bit, or change out a few images, maybe you want to change a global font. A lot of that stuff can be done through what's called cascading style sheets, CSS. And even though it's a global site change, it's a pretty quick thing to implement from a development perspective. This is also true if your content, if you're able to load in the backend, the core structure, your CMS you're happy with, and it's working for your team, and it's accessible and conformant to WCAG standards, then if it's just like some cosmetic things, it makes a lot of sense to just retrofit and invest your dollars there. I would say when you're looking at your budget, whether to retrofit or rebuild, the biggest decisions or thoughts need to be put into your packet administration and your CMS system that you're using and the plugins that you're using, because if those are expensive to maintain or to have work done in, then that's going to be a big part of your decision. And actually, we were kind of working with a client just right now, Erica, as far as someone that it's because their site is custom built, it's very expensive to do any work on it because someone has to completely come in and understand the code that went into their system. So that's a situation where you could almost rebuild for what it's going to cost someone to have those updates made to the site.
Yeah, I mean, I think putting an overall structure to all of the things that you just said, it's really, are you in general happy with the site? Are you in general, the visual appearance? Does it look like something, like a site that somebody has built in the last few years? Is the content, even if the content isn't up to date, is the structure of the content, are your services the same? You're just not quite describing them the same way. You said it very, very quickly, but accessibility, is it generally accessible? It's just not, so it complies to or conforms to today's accessibility standards, but those are things like the foundation of the house has to be secure, because that's really the piece that if you have a house and the foundation is not secure, no amount of paint is going to make this house the right house to go into the future.
Yeah. I think an example of that is if your site doesn't use a system that automatically makes it responsive and mobile friendly, that already, that's outdated, right?
You're stuck in 2014.
Right. We see that though sometimes, don't we?
We absolutely 100% do. So let's talk about then the converse side of that, which is, okay, what are the things that you see that should tell you, no, it is time to rebuild this site?
Yeah. Well, what are some things that you see that you think? I mean, mine are mostly back-end development kinds of things, but from your perspective.
So from my perspective, I would say, look, I'm going to start, people ask me this all the time, and I sometimes demur, but I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm going to say this.
Okay.
If your site is more than 4 to 5 years old, retrofit is not the right way to go. You really need to be thinking about a rebuild. And it's just, the reason for that is because the development cycle and the trends of digital marketing are just rapid enough that once you get beyond, I mean, there are some people who say 3 years. I'm being a little more conservative by saying this 4 to 5 years. If you're older than that, it's just the technology and the thinking. And, we've been around now at Spring Insight. We've been around for 12 years, I believe. And so we certainly have seen, look, we've redone sites that we did because that was just a different era of site building. And just like, you wouldn't build other things the same way, you don't build sites. And this technology moves much more rapidly than other things. So I would say that's the first piece. The second one, and I'm going to invite you, Laura, to talk more about this, which is if your backend is messy, the backend of the website.
Yes, never have a messy back end, right?
Never have a messy
always
back
want
end.
a clean and tidy back end. If you take nothing out of this conversation today, I think it comes down to resource hours of your staff, of people to put things in, and just efficiency in general. And the better organized things are kept, the better that processes are documented and people are aware of them. It just makes everything easier, so that whether you do a refit or whether you do a rebuild, it really comes down to being able to take that information that's critical to the site that you're trying to get across to your users and being able to manipulate and use it and move it in the direction to follow your user path and journeys. So, yeah.
Exactly. Next, I would say, if it's not up to industry standards, and so here's where we're going to start to talk. You mentioned mobile friendly, that's, a number of years ago.
Right. That should just be a given. Like that doesn't even come up, right? Okay,
that's a given.
Right? Yeah.
Well, it's a given, and it should have been a given for anything that was built after like 2014, 2015. We're in that same sort of inflection point period with accessibility, where sites that were built prior to 2022, 2023, maybe 2024, but we're beginning to get a little much on that, should be accessibility compliant. They should be built with an eye towards WCAG, at least at minimum AA standards, right? So that a site, and they should be maintained to those standards to keep your site, conformant to that. And if that hasn't been done, or if you don't know that that's been done, it's really time to consider a rebuild for your site.
Yeah.
I would add also, in terms of when to think of rebuilds, are you really, are you needing a big functionality upgrade? Are there things that your site didn't do before, but you really want them to do now? And finally, has your branding, your product offering, the fundamental things that sort of support your business, have those changed?
Yeah. And, if nothing else, going through your website content every 5 years or so is a great exercise for the organization itself to make sure they're still clear on what their digital message is and that they're in the right places.
I'm going to change that to 4 to 5 years because I think 5 is a little bit lengthy. But I agree completely.
I would say you're looking at your content all the time, though, right? That's actually true. Always looking at that. So.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So let's talk about what are the questions that a small business might be asking themselves to start this process. While you're thinking about it, I'll throw one out. So what is your goal? Is it a short-term fix or long-term growth? Are you trying to, are you trying to sort of Band-Aid? Maybe there is something happening that you're Band-Aiding the site for right now. You don't have quite the revenue here, but you can plan for the revenue there. Those are some questions that might tell you, you know what? We can get away with just doing a quick retrofit now because we want to be able to do this later. So what is your goal right now?
Yeah. I think also if it's not that client's business, and usually it isn't, right? We deal with subject matter experts that are in different fields. Sometimes it makes sense to just do like a discovery with an agency such as Spring Insight, like we are, just because you don't know what you don't know, right? And for example, there's been a lot of changes in being able to automate connections between, say, an AMS and your content management system, your website, and the possibilities that opens up and the efficiencies that create are really exciting. But a regular person's not going to know that, right? So for an organization, it really might just be worth the investment of just an initial consultation to have your workflows looked at, have your website looked at, and see what are the possibilities, what can be done.
Is it amazing? You're absolutely correct. I will make one minor correction, which is an initial consultation is usually just a much shorter meeting. Hi, how are you? This is our website. A discovery period is what you're talking about. And you absolutely are correct. During a discovery period, that's when we sit down. That's where we go through a client, where we really talk at a very high level to a client about the work that they do, about what the site is that exists, what's working with the site, what's not working, what do they hope that it accomplishes. And a really good, well done discovery session will not only be beneficial for the web team, it's actually shockingly beneficial to the client, because typically our clients don't have that opportunity to think about themselves organizationally at this strategic level. And they really end up learning a lot about themselves as an organization when they do these discovery sessions.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's a great place for us to sort of sum up this video. So Laura, thank you so much for joining me. And everybody who's watching, thank you so much as well. We always appreciate, we enjoy doing this content, and we appreciate you for enjoying it and for watching. If you have learned something, if this has been something that's been beneficial, please like the video. We'd love to see some comments. And if this is something we talked about, what the difference between an initial consultation and a discovery period is, but if your site is either, where you're thinking retrofit, rebuild, any of those, and you sort of aren't sure which direction to go in, go to our website, springinsight.com, and schedule some time. We'd love to chat with you.